Welcome back, everyone. We're here today with episode 2070 of the Cabral Concept. I'll be linking up any research for you today, any helpful tips right at stephencabral.com/2070. But today is really the culmination, the final piece of what we've been talking about over the last 3 weeks about hunger hormones, fat burning hormones, and overall intermittent fasting and calorie restriction. So at one point or another, I think most people, while they're trying to burn more body fat or lose weight, they're using some form of intermittent fasting, they're using some form of calorie restriction, or some form of maybe potentially lowering carbohydrates. So usually people fall into one of those camps, sometimes all three of them. And all of them can be really useful. So I'm actually not talking negatively about any one of them. But what I want to talk with you today about, and let me just give you the past two shows that maybe if you haven't tuned into them yet, go back, listen to those. Today's show will make total sense without it, but I want to be able to add a little bit, another level, a little bit going a little bit deeper with you. So let's see. Last week's was overcoming leptin resistance to burn more body fat. That was episode 2063. And we talked about, let's see here right now, and it looks like eliminating lower belly bulge was episode 2049. All right, so both of those super important to take a look at that. What I'd like to do though right now though is share with you this final piece. I call it the final piece because what so many of us are doing in our lives or have tried before is that we believe we're on the right path. And we might even see some short-term results. But what we don't see is 4 months, 6 months, a year down the road, right? So we have always new diet plans. We've got always brand new technology, brand new pharmaceutical drugs, brand new even extracts of certain vitamins. And what we want to understand is what could this do for me now? What could it do for me later? Meaning like positively, what can I get out of now? Then I need to weigh potential negative or potential positive future benefits. So what I want to share with you right now is what happens when we're doing longer term calorie restriction, we might call it CR, or longer term fasting. And so we really want to go over that because it can dramatically affect our hormones, hunger hormones, neurotransmitters, and stress levels in the body. All right, so there's 4 main pieces to it. Is that when we are looking at what we are trying to achieve, we're trying to achieve essentially a negative energy balance if we're looking to lose weight. That means ultimately what we want to have happen is we are taking in less calories, or doesn't be taking in less, or we're burning more calories than we are taking in through food, right? So think of this. You eat 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, let's say, 2 meals a day, whatever you want to do, right? And you take in that nutrition. You get your micronutrients with your vitamins, your minerals, all those great things, and then your macronutrients with your carbs, fat, and protein. Okay, all of that adds energy to the body, right? Mainly the macronutrients where we're talking about calories in. Now, during a given day is our resting metabolic rate, or a basal metabolic rate. And if you don't know what those are, no problem at all. Go to stephencabral.com/2070 and we'll link up basal metabolic rate and resting metabolic rate. So great podcast on that because you burn calories every day without exercise. Now we add on exercise or walking or some type of physical activity, and then we're burning more calories. Okay, so now on a given daily basis, are we burning more than energy we're taking in? And in a perfect world, if we're doing that, well, we start to lose weight. Now, that does not always work that way. I know people always say it goes back to calories in, calories out. The problem is, if there are issues with your stress hormones and fat burning hormones, you're not going to be able to burn fat the same way, right? So we'll talk about that. We'll go a little bit deeper. We'll start to peel back that onion as I've been talking about before and share with you why that may be. Now, again, a couple simple tweaks to your program and you're going to be right back on track. And that's really what this is all about. And if you're already doing well, now this is going to help you break past a plateau in the future and hopefully not hit that plateau. We work with literally thousands of people every single year. meaning like for competitions or weight loss or whatever they may need to do. And tens of thousands of people every single year who are just looking to simply lose weight. And that's great. Like, again, getting to your ideal body weight for you, for nobody else, but for you is a great goal, because if you can get your BMI between 19 and 24, 24.9 at the highest, overall, you're going to be healthier. Now, of course, there's nuances to that, and we can go back and forth on, well, what if you have lower body fat percentage, but your BMI is 26? Well, again, we're not talking about that. We're talking about general population. Most people, meaning like 99 out of 100 or more, are going to be healthier if they're within that BMI. And if you don't know what your BMI is, I've got a free calculator for you to use at stephencabral.com/assessments. It's completely free to use. There's no email opt-in. There's nothing. So you can go to stephencabral.com/assessments to find out your ideal body weight and your ideal BMI. Now, remember, it's not one body weight. It's a given range, right? So if you're 5'8", maybe your range is between like if you're a male, maybe it's between like 140 and 170. And if you're female, maybe it's between like not too far off, 130 and 160 or so, right? So let's look at that. You can actually find the range, because you don't have to be at the lower end. You don't have to be at the higher end. You can be what's good for you. But if you don't know why BMI is so important, I'm going to link up that podcast as well. All right, so let's get right down to it. The bottom line is many people plateau and they start burning body fat because they've gone too far in one direction, meaning that they push the fasting too far, okay? Or they've pushed their caloric restriction, meaning they're dieting and their calories on a daily basis, too low. And there are easy ways to fix this, but there's 4 reasons why this happens. So the first one is this, right? So you're doing intermittent fasting, you're feeling great, or you're on a low carb diet, or you're on a lower calorie diet, you're feeling great, you're getting results, life is good. But then all of a sudden you start to plateau. Why do you plateau? Again, there's 4 main reasons. Let's go over it right now. The first one is this: your body stops producing as much leptin. I just spoke about that last week. If you don't know what leptin and ghrelin is, these are really powerful hunger hormones and fat burning hormones. So if your leptin levels are where they should be, if they are elevated, that's a very good thing, because leptin decreases hunger, right? And it's going to help you burn more body fat, where ghrelin, we'll call it the hunger hormone. It's going to increase hunger to say you need to eat more. And a lot of people, when they get to a certain point in their fasting or their dieting, leptin levels begin to drop. So you stop burning as much body fat. Your body's in a starvation-based state, and ghrelin levels start to go higher. This is a real problem. And I talked about leptin resistance last week as well. If you don't know about that and why it happens with longer term fasting, I need you to check that out, because that's really powerful information. Again, that was on episode 2063, which we will link up here today. So you want to keep your leptin levels high. And this is I'm going to talk about today, burning body fat, especially that last 10 pounds, maybe 15 pounds. It's easier before that. It really is. But what happens is it's a delicate dance, because as you have less and less body fat on your body, the less body fat you have, oftentimes the less leptin your body is producing, because leptin is predominantly produced by fat cells. The more fat you start to burn, well, the less leptin then you're going to produce. Now, this can backfire actually, and you can start to add more body fat when your body's in a bad place of inflammation, stress hormones, etc. So our job, again, is to walk that delicate dance, or do that delicate dance with making sure that we don't go too low in carbs for too long, fast for too long, or go calorie restricted for too long. And I'll give you a couple quick tips at the end. So the second one is this: if you fast for too long, or you're fasting oftentimes during a stressful period of the day or time, especially like first thing in the morning, maybe you're up, you're getting ready for work, or you're stuck in traffic, or getting the kids ready, it's stressful, and you're producing more cortisol, and yet your blood sugar levels might be low, and you're producing more cortisol, and cortisol's job is to do what? Well, it's a glucocorticoid, right? So if you hear gluco in there, you might be thinking glucose, and if you think that, you're right on the target, right? Because it says, okay, whether you really are in a state of stress where you really need to run away, right? If you really need to run away or really need to fight, your body doesn't know that, or if you're sitting still in traffic. So what it does is it starts to break down stored glycogen, and it turns it into essentially usable glucose in your bloodstream. So it raises blood sugar levels. It's not artificially, but without even eating any carbohydrates, right? Or protein. So this is important to keep in mind, because if you are too stressed and fasting, it's almost counterproductive, or not almost, it is counterproductive, right? So we have to be careful with the level of caffeine we take in on an empty stomach in the morning and the level of stress first thing in the morning. I'm going to add a little bonus piece to this as well, because don't just worry about cortisol going up, worry about thyroid going lower. And as thyroid goes lower, what happens? Well, your metabolic rate begins to become reduced. And just forget about, all the other things that come along with it, with thinning hair for men and women, thinning outer edge of the eyebrow, drying skin, cold hands, cold feet, poor circulation. What else is one of the big ones? Brain fog. I mean, these are all big things, but also it limits and slows the amount of calories that you can eat per day. So now all of a sudden you need to go lower and lower and lower with calories. And honestly, nobody wants that. And it's a path to nowhere. It's a path to a very slow metabolism. So you have to be careful in this one as well. The third one is this, and this is very well documented. I have 2 big podcasts on this that showed why 2 different people can be doing a 16-8 diet, intermittent fast, and one group is stripping away massive amounts of muscle on their body over time. Not a good thing, because they show weight loss on the scale, so like, oh, things are going well, but it's actually mainly muscle loss. We'll link that up today as well on episode 2070, StephenCabral.com/2070, and keep in mind, all of these shows are, of course, free. So here's what happens. People are losing 2 pounds in a month through overextended intermittent fasting. And that 2 pounds might not seem like a big deal. Maybe it's an extra 50 calories a day of caloric burn, but then you lose another couple pounds over the next month or 2. And all of a sudden you're down 100, 200 calories per day. Well, you might say, well, it's no big deal, but it is a big deal when you're only eating 1,500 calories or 1,200 calories a day. Now you need to eat 1,000 calories per day, 900 calories per day. Next thing you know, you're eating barely any calories in order to maintain your weight or try to lose a little bit more. So again, this is a path to absolutely nowhere. It's a path to misery because you don't want to be on this diet forever. And if you ever go back to eating just normal calories, you'll gain the weight because you've been losing muscle. So again, we have to be careful. We don't want to lose muscle by doing caloric restriction, carb restriction, or fasting for too long. Okay, the last point is this: decreases in progesterone, especially for women. This is going to affect women the most, more than men. So women's bodies are much more apt to begin to, I'm going to use the word break down faster with lower calories, higher stress, or longer fasts. And the reason is that women's bodies are meant to reproduce life, to produce life. That means that if a woman's body is put into a survival-based state, a state that is not fit in order to be able to carry on life, she is going to have menstrual dysregularities that over time will lead to infertility or a loss of a menstrual cycle. We see this thousands of times per year inside of our practice. And yes, it is fixable, because once you know the underlying mechanisms, you know how to work backwards. Do you fix it overnight? Of course you do not. What you do, though, is you begin to work the process, and then women can get healthy again. That's what it's all about. So here's what we need to look at. As you begin to increase stress hormones from a lack of calories, higher levels of stress, too long of or chronic based dieting, basically what happens is your body says, okay, we're going to produce less progesterone. This is exactly what happens. Again, we run thousands, maybe 10,000 plus what's called stress hormone, mood, and metabolism tests every single year. These are at-home lab tests that anyone can run. And what it shows is that over time with stress, progesterone levels begin to drop. When progesterone levels begin to drop, women typically have normal estrogen, 9 out of 10 women, but it feels like estrogen dominant. So now they're retaining water, more cellulite, more puffiness, more irritability, lower mood, adult-based acne, bloating. These are all serious issues that many women are dealing with, but they don't know that it's attached to the dieting or the high levels of cortisol and stress. So this is super important, because once you realize this, well, then you can go about emptying the rain barrel. You can go about rebalancing those hormone levels naturally, not with bioidentical hormones, not with hormone replacement therapy, not with birth control, any of those things. They're not necessary if you choose not to use them. I'm not telling you what to do. I just want to give you options. That's it. I I tell everyone this in my practice. I support you, whatever you want to do. If you want to use conventional medicine, great. I support you. If you want to use natural health, great. I support you. If you want to be on a vegan diet, I support you. If you want to be on a primal diet, I support you. Whatever you want, I support you. I just want to know that you have options. And the main goal should always be finding the underlying root cause. I just gave you 4 big ones here today that are going to hurt your fat loss progress. And it's due to over fasting, not fasting, but over fasting, over dieting, meaning dropping your calories too low, and also dropping your carbohydrates too low for too long. All of these things matter. They absolutely do. Our bodies are more sensitive sometimes than others, and we have to be aware of this. So if you've hit a plateau, or you've kind of been on this yo-yo dieting before and it's worked for a little while and then it stopped working, these are typically the reasons why. You can really test all of these things with one lab. I can show you the one that I recommend. It's at stevencabral.com/hormones-test. That is, we sign off on for you. Of course, all these labs, a doctor needs to sign off. We'll sign off on it for you. You can run this right at home. Now, you don't have to, but again, I'm giving you the ability to find out your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, cortisol 4 times throughout the day, your thyroid levels, not just TSH, but T4, T3, TPO antibodies, and your insulin, as well as your hemoglobin A1C. So these are super important things to look at. Again, your choice. But now, like, what can you do though? Well, here's the thing. If you are doing a 16-8 fast right now and you're not working out with resistance with weights, right, 2 to 3 times a week, you might be doing yourself a real disservice. And I'm going to link up the podcast about what happens when you're fasting for 16 hours a day, but not doing any resistance training, stripping away muscle. Okay, really, really important. If you have higher levels of stress and you're over fasting or dropping your calories, you're putting your body in a greater state of a survival-based state. Really, really important. If you have any thyroid issues previously and you're working on an empty stomach, I talked about that last week. Actually, I'm talking about tomorrow. So stay tuned for that, about who should work out fast and who shouldn't, because again, it's not an all for one. You want to stay tuned for that. So what's kind of the overarching advice here then? Well, it's intermittent fast every day, no doubt about it. 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours. The more hours before bed, the better, honestly, than the more hours after you wake up. That's actually when we start to get into a detriment. And again, I've shared that now for the last 6 years. People are finally, like, experts are finally starting to share the same thing with you. It's funny how you're starting to hear it over the last couple of months about maybe fasting for this long isn't a good idea. Well, again, we can tell you who it's a good idea and who it's not for by running labs, and we're in a clinical practice. So that's why we know things before a lot of other people who may be writing articles or have a podcast or whatever it is. And that's fine. Again, we're not like trying to say, oh, we're better than anybody else. That's not what it's about. It's just saying, when you run lab work, you run a clinical practice, you see these things, you actually see what happens in the real world. There's no theory. This is what happens when a person does this. And we can just tell them what to do. So here's the thing. Fast every day, right? 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours. I've already given contraindications on previous fasting shows for who shouldn't, but it's very few individuals, right? So like for me, I found my perfect fasting window. And for me, it's 6 p.m. at night, finish dinner, right? Done. And then I go till 8 o'clock the next morning. For me, that's 14 hours, right? I believe it's 14 hours. So I go 6 till midnight, 6 plus 8 is 14. So 14 hours is my perfect fasting window. Once I start work, once I'm really in it, I'm having my breakfast because my sympathetic nervous system is on. I'm geared to go. I don't get really any necessarily more benefit, but here's what I do. But then once a week, I actually do a longer fast. I call it my one-day diet, my one-day reset. I'll link that up for you today as well. That's episode 2070. And then every 12 weeks, well, then I do a longer fast, and that's my Equilife functional medicine detox that I do, which is a longer fast. So what am I doing? Well, I'm using this how it's meant to be done, how Ayurvedic medicine and every form of medicine besides conventional medicine is done for thousands of years. You do it cyclically, a longer one with each season to help empty the rain barrel. You do a longer one once a week, which, by the way, back then might have been from lack of food, but it also was actually helping to clean the body at a deeper level through a process called autophagy. So, you know, these are all things that are built in the human body. The problem is with our Western-based mindset, we just overdo it, right? So we want to use it, but we don't want to overdo it. So if you're using intermittent fasting, intelligently, then you're going to get the maximum benefits out of it. Now, in terms of caloric restriction or even low carb, you can do that if you want to. But what we've seen work best in my practice, and I've talked about this on the Leptin and Ghrelin podcast, is that you need to do one meal a week, okay, that contains a higher amount of carbohydrates. It doesn't have to be a cheat meal. It can be a cheat meal. You can enjoy dessert. You can enjoy whatever you want. But if you want to keep your eating clean, well, this is what we'll do with people, athletes, whoever we might be working with, is that you're going to want to add 2 or 3 sweet potatoes or a bowl of rice pasta or a bowl of whatever type of pasta that you want, whatever kind you want, that once a week to get more carbs in there to then what? Well, decrease the ghrelin levels, increase fat burning hormone levels, decrease sympathetic nervous system activation, improve thyroid. All of these things are super important. So much more to come. I also have obviously plenty more free podcasts at stephencabral.com/podcast. They've all been categorized. So take your time, dive in, ask us if there's any questions. You can just head on over to cabralsupportgroup.com, completely free Q&A, private support group that you're welcome to ask questions on. Thank you so much for tuning into today's show. If it was helpful, please do feel free to pass it along to anyone else you believe it could serve. Take care, everyone.